When Lana and I moved to this quiet suburban patch of Ohio 7 years ago, I never thought life would settle into such a steady rhythm. It's the kind of place where the mornings hum with the sound of sprinklers, the evenings carry the faint scent of barbecue, and the nights are so still you can hear the crickets from the next yard over. My job as a production manager at the auto plant keeps me busy during the week, while Lana takes care of things at home. She's got this effortless way of making our house feel warm and welcoming. Her baking, her knack for picking out the perfect throw pillow, the little details I wouldn't even think of. We've got good neighbors, too. Ben and Brenda live just across the street. Brenda's been Lana's friend since they were kids, and it's clear their bond runs deep. The two of them can spend hours on the porch, laughing over coffee or reminiscing about old times. Remember that time in middle school when you cut your bangs and thought you looked like a supermodel? Brenda teased one morning as they sat on our porch swing. "Oh, shut up, Brenda," Lana shot back, though she couldn't hide her grin. "At least I didn't wear neon leg warmers to every single school dance." "Hey now, neon was in," Brenda protested. "Sure, if you were trying to be a traffic cone," Lana quipped, and they both burst into laughter. Ben and I get along just fine, too, though our conversations are less animated. We talk shop sometimes. He's in logistics, swap tips on lawn care, or just shoot the breeze over a couple of beers. "Still struggling with that patch by the mailbox?" Ben asked me last Saturday. "Yeah, I think the soil's just cursed," I replied, shaking my head. "Lana's ready to throw in the towel and plant fake grass." "Smart woman," Ben said with a chuckle, raising his bottle in a mock toast. Things were comfortable, predictable even, until a few weeks ago when Lana told me her friend Maria was moving into the neighborhood. "She bought that little white house down the street, the one with the blue shutters," Lana said one evening as we were finishing dinner. I looked up from my plate. "Maria, from college, right?" "Yeah, that's her. Can you believe it? She's been looking for a place closer to family, and this one just popped up." "Huh," I said, trying to sound neutral. Lana's told me plenty of stories about Maria over the years, enough to know she's got a big personality. "She's a bit much," I ventured carefully. Lana shot me a look. "She's fun, Kevin, and she's been through a lot lately. It'll be nice for her to have us close by." I nodded, letting it go. If Lana was excited, that was good enough for me. Besides, it might be nice to mix things up a bit. And so, last week, Maria pulled up in a moving truck, a whirlwind of energy in oversized sunglasses and a bright red scarf. "Well, look who's finally joining the suburbs." Lana greeted her with open arms. "Oh, honey, you know I couldn't resist being near my two best girls," Maria said dramatically, pulling Brenda into the hug as well. "And Kevin, of course," she added with a wink in my direction. "Glad to have you," I said, shaking her hand. Maria's arrival was bound to add a little color to our quiet street. The three of them, Lana, Brenda, and Maria, were already plotting their first girls' night out as we stood there on the driveway. "She's going to keep things lively around here," Brenda said later as we walked back to our respective houses. "That's one way to put it," I muttered, earning a laugh from Ben. And just like that, Maria was part of our little world, settling into her new home in the same neighborhood. When Lana told me Maria was moving into the neighborhood, I'd had my doubts, but I kept them to myself. I figured, how bad could it be? People change, right? But the moment I met her again, standing on our driveway with her oversized sunglasses and that too bright red scarf, the old feelings came rushing back. Something about Maria just didn't sit right with me, never had. That evening, as Lana and I were cleaning up after dinner, I finally decided to say something. "Listen," I started, drying the plates as Lana handed them to me. "About Maria. What about her?" Lana didn't look up, focused on scrubbing the pan. I hesitated. "I don't know. She just gives me bad vibes. Always has." Lana paused and looked over her shoulder at me, raising an eyebrow. "Bad vibes? Kevin, that's ridiculous. Maria's had a tough life." "I'm not saying she hasn't," I replied, "but there's something off about her. I can't explain it. And you know me. I don't usually feel this way about people." Lana sighed and went back to scrubbing. "She's been through a lot. 3 divorces, Kevin. 3. And now she's decided not to get married again. She's just trying to find some peace in her life." "Maybe she's the problem," I said bluntly. "I mean, come on, Lana. If you can't get it right the second time, maybe don't try for a third." Lana spun around, hands on her hips, her expression a mix of frustration and disbelief. "That's unfair, Kevin. You don't know what she's been through. People aren't perfect. Relationships aren't perfect. You can't just write someone off because they've made mistakes." "I'm not writing her off," I said, setting the plate down a little harder than I meant to. I'm just saying, maybe her bad luck isn't luck at all. Maybe it's her. Kevin, Lana said, her voice softer now but still firm. I get that you don't like Maria. You never have. But she's my friend. My good friend. I need you to be civil to her. Can you do that for me? I took a deep breath, trying to rein in my irritation. I'll be civil. But don't expect me to play nice beyond that. Keep her away from me, Lana. Work had been a nightmare lately. The factory was running like a well-oiled machine until last month when a fire broke out in one of the storage areas. It wasn't a full-blown inferno, but it was enough to shut us down for 3 days and throw the entire production schedule into chaos. I got the call at midnight, a manager's worst nightmare. Kevin, we've got a situation here, came the panicked voice of Sam, the night shift supervisor. There's been a fire in Bay 3. The sprinklers handled most of it, but the smoke damage. I'm on my way, I said, already pulling on my jeans. When I got to the plant, the place reeked of burnt plastic and charred wood. A few employees were milling around outside, looking dazed, while the fire department packed up their gear. Sam met me near the entrance, his face ashen. It was the wiring, he explained as we walked toward the damaged area. We've had issues with the old panels before, but this was bad. Half the inventory in that bay is toast. I spent the rest of the night assessing the damage and sketching out a plan to get us back on track. Over the next few weeks, I practically lived at the factory. Meetings with the insurance adjusters, coordinating repairs, reworking schedules. It felt like I was juggling a dozen balls and couldn't drop a single one. Meanwhile, back at home, Lana was spending most of her time with Brenda and Maria. I'd come home late at night to find the house dark and quiet, the faint smell of Lana's perfume lingering in the hallway. She'd leave me little notes, dinners in the fridge. Love you. I appreciated it, but I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that Maria was working her way further into our lives while I was stuck at the factory. After a month, things finally started to settle down at work. Repairs were done, production was back on schedule, and I told my boss I needed a break. You've earned it, he said, clapping me on the back. Take the week off. Just don't disappear completely. I'll still need you on email. When I got home that evening, Lana was in the kitchen, humming to herself as she chopped vegetables. Hey, stranger, she said with a smile when she saw me. Hey, I said, setting my bag down and leaning against the counter. Guess who's got a week off? Her face lit up. That's great, Kevin. You deserve it. Yeah, I said, watching her closely. So, what VE you been up to while I've been buried at the factory? Not much, she said casually. Just hanging out with Brenda and Maria. There it was again, Maria. I bit back a sigh and tried to keep my tone neutral. Maria's still around every day? Not every day, Lana said, giving me a look. She's my friend, Kevin. And she's been a big help while you've been busy. She even brought over a casserole last week. A casserole, I said dryly. Well, maybe she's not completely useless. Kevin, Lana said, her voice tinged with warning. I'm just saying, I replied, holding up my hands. She's been divorced 3 times, Lana. 3. If you can't get it right the second time, maybe don't try for a third. Lana set down the knife and turned to face me, her expression serious. That's not fair, Kevin. You don't know what she's been through. Not everyone has it as easy as we do. Easy? I said, incredulous. You think my life's been easy these last few weeks? That factory fire didn't put itself out, Lana. And while I was working my ass off to keep us afloat, you were what? Having brunch with Maria and swapping sob stories. That's not fair. Lana snapped, her eyes flashing. You've been gone for a month, Kevin. A month. What was I supposed to do? Sit here alone and wait for you to come home? I ran a hand through my hair, trying to stay calm. Look, I get it. You need your friends. But I don't trust her, Lana. There's something about her. I don't like it. And I don't want her around me. She's not around you, Lana shot back. She's around me. And Brenda. And she's been nothing but kind, Kevin. The least you could do is be civil. I met her gaze, my voice low but firm. I'll be civil. But don't ask for more than that. Keep her away from me, Lana. That week off hadn't started the way I'd hoped. The house felt different, like there was something unsaid hanging in the air. One afternoon, I came back from running errands and found Lana and Maria on the couch, arms wrapped around Brenda, who was crying into a tissue. What's going on? I asked, setting my keys on the counter. Lana looked up at me, her expression a mix of concern and hesitation. Ben filed for divorce. I blinked. What? Ben and Brenda? She nodded. Brenda doesn't want to talk about it yet. She's still processing. I shook my head, leaning against the doorway. I never would have guessed. Those two seemed solid. Lana sighed. Sometimes things aren't as perfect as they look on the outside. Maria, who had been quietly stroking Brenda's back, looked over at me. It's a tough time for her. We're just trying to be here for her. Something about the way Maria said it, so calm, so matter-of-fact, set my teeth on edge. I pushed the thought aside and forced a casual tone. You know what I think? It's Maria's curse. Lana shot me a sharp look. Kevin, I'm just saying, I said with a shrug. Everywhere this woman goes, marriages fall apart. Maybe it's time to consider the common denominator. Kevin, stop, Lana said firmly. She's Brenda's friend, our friend, and she's just trying to help. Be civil. I raised my hands in mock surrender. Fine, fine. I'll keep my thoughts to myself, but I didn't stick around. The atmosphere in the house felt heavy, and I needed to clear my head. I grabbed my jacket and headed out, deciding a drink might help me unwind. I ended up at O'Malley's, the local bar, nursing a beer and replaying the afternoon in my mind. That's when I spotted Ben sitting in a corner booth, a glass of whiskey in front of him. He looked like hell, disheveled and hollow-eyed, like a man carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Ben, I said, sliding into the seat across from him. Didn't expect to see you here. He glanced up at me, his expression bleak. Hey, Kevin. I gestured toward his drink. You okay, man? Lana told me about, the divorce. Ben let out a bitter laugh and took a long sip of his whiskey. Yeah, well, that's what happens when someone else starts living in your marriage. I frowned. What do you mean? It's Maria, he said, his voice tight. She was way too involved. Brenda started consulting her about everything. Everything. To the point where she wouldn't make a damn decision without running it by Maria first. Even stupid things like buying drapes for the living room. Drapes? I asked, trying to follow. Ben's jaw tightened, and his hands clenched around his glass. And then, he trailed off, shaking his head. And then what? I pressed. Ben's eyes welled up, and he looked away, his voice breaking. I can't, man. I just can't. Before I could ask more, he slid out of the booth and left the bar, leaving me staring after him. When I got home, I told Lana what Ben had said. She frowned, her arms crossed over her chest. I don't know anything about that, Kevin. Brenda hasn't said a word to me about Maria causing problems. Well, maybe you should ask her, I said pointedly. Because if Maria's screwing up their marriage, who's to say she won't start meddling in ours? Lana's eyes narrowed. That's not fair. Maria's just trying to support Brenda. She's been nothing but kind to her. Yeah, and look where that kindness got them. I shot back. I'm telling you, Lana, keep away from Maria. It had been one of those long, exhausting days where all I wanted was to sink into the couch and let the world fade away. The factory was back in full swing, but the pressure to meet quotas after the downtime was relentless. By the time I got home, all I could think about was a hot shower, a cold beer, and maybe catching up on that crime show I'd been watching. Lana was already in the living room when I walked in, curled up in her favorite chair with a book. She looked up as I set my bag down and walked over to collapse onto the couch. Hey, she said softly, setting the book aside. Hey, I replied, kicking off my shoes. You okay? She got up and came to sit beside me, tucking her legs underneath her. Yeah, I'm fine. Just wanted to talk to you about something. Her tone was light, almost playful, but there was something in her eyes that made me sit up a little straighter. Sure, I said cautiously. What's on your mind? She smiled, tilting her head slightly as she looked at me. Kevin, do you love me? The question caught me off guard, and I let out a small laugh. Well, of course, honey. Why would you even ask that? She reached out and took my hand, her smile growing a little wider. I've been thinking about us, about our life together, and there's something I want to discuss with you. I nodded, still trying to read her expression. All right, go ahead. She took a deep breath, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her sleeve. You're the first person I ever dated, Kevin, and the first person I ever, had sex with. I raised an eyebrow. Okay. She smiled again, a little nervously this time. It's just that, lately, I've been feeling like maybe it's time for me to experiment a little. Experiment? Okay, let's buy a Kama Sutra book. I am all for it, I repeated, my mind already scrambling to process what she was saying. Yeah, she said, nodding. I mean, I love you, Kevin. I do. But I've been wondering what it might be like to experience other things. Other people. I blinked, trying to make sure I'd heard her right. You're saying you want to, spice things up in the bedroom? Try new things? We can do that. We'll buy a Kama Sutra book or something. Lana shook her head, her smile turning almost apologetic. No, Kevin, that's not what I mean. I want to try other men. For a moment, I just stared at her, my mind struggling to catch up. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to go off. Finally, I found my voice. Other men, I said slowly. She nodded. And then it hit me, like a flash of lightning. My jaw tightened, and I leaned forward, my voice low and sharp. Let me guess. Maria suggested that, didn't she? Am I right? The look on Lana's face said it all. Her eyes widened, and her mouth opened slightly in shock. She didn't need to say a word. I knew I'd hit the mark. Maria. That woman had been planting ideas like weeds in my wife's head. I stood up, the couch creaking slightly as I moved. My heart was pounding, a mixture of anger and disbelief surging through me. I turned to face Lana, my voice steady but edged with a firmness I couldn't suppress. Lana, I began. We've been married for 7 years. And not for a single day in those 7 years have I had even the slightest desire for another woman. I've been faithful to you, completely. I've never let my eyes, my heart, or my body stray. And you know what? I expected the same from you. That's what a marriage is, isn't it? Faithfulness. Commitment. Respect. She stared at me, her lips trembling as she tried to find the words to respond. I didn't let her. If my expectations are too much, I continued, my voice rising slightly, then maybe you should take some advice from your good friend Maria. File for a divorce. Lana gasped, her hand flying to her chest. Kevin, you don't mean that. You wouldn't fight for our marriage? I looked her straight in the eye, my jaw tight. No, Lana, I wouldn't. Because once you decide to break the vow, to forsake all others, you don't just break a promise. You destroy a marriage. You destroy the trust, the love, the foundation of everything we've built together. She looked stricken, tears welling up in her eyes. I didn't mean, but I cut her off again. So, my dear wife, I said, my voice dropping to a cold, steady tone, be very careful about what you decide. Because if you so much as entertain the thought of acting on this experiment, I'll file for divorce before you open your legs for another man. I didn't wait for Lana to say another word. I walked past her, my mind racing, my heart pounding, and headed straight to our bedroom. The thought of staying in the same bed as her after what she just said made my skin crawl. She followed me, her voice trembling as she called out, Kevin, wait, please, it was just a discussion. That's all it was. I didn't answer. I grabbed a duffel bag from the closet and started packing. Some clothes, my toothbrush, a few essentials. Lana stood in the doorway, her tears falling freely now. Kevin, please, she said, her voice breaking. I didn't mean to hurt you. I wanted to talk about how I was feeling. I zipped the bag shut and turned to her, my face set. And this is what you decided to talk about? How you want to sleep with other men? Do you even hear yourself, Lana? Do you understand what you're saying? She sobbed, her hands clasped tightly together. It wasn't like that. I wasn't saying I was going to do it. I just wanted to be honest about what I was feeling. I shook my head, slinging the bag over my shoulder and brushing past her. No, Lana. The moment you let the thought of having sex with another man into your mind, you started down a path I can't follow. And right now, I can't even look at you without feeling betrayed. I made my way to the guest room, dropped the bag on the bed, and turned to face her as she stood in the hallway, tears streaming down her face. We'll only get back to where we were when I can be sure you've dropped this insane idea, I said, my voice firm. And the first step you can take is to drop that woman Maria as your friend. Her face crumpled, and she opened her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand to stop her. Trust me, Lana, I said, my voice dropping. She will drag you through hell. 3 days. 3 long, silent, agonizing days. I didn't speak to Lana, and she didn't try to speak to me. She knew where I stood, and I wasn't about to back down. Maria hadn't been around the house, at least not when I was home, but I wasn't naive. I could feel it in the way Lana avoided me, the way her phone was always near her. She was still talking to Maria. That thought simmered in the back of my mind, stoking the anger that refused to leave me. If she'd really cut ties with that woman, she'd have come to me by now, trying to make things right. Instead, she stayed quiet, like she was waiting for something. The next day, I came home from work, the tension in the house as thick as ever. Lana was in the shower when I noticed her phone sitting on the couch. She'd never been one to lock it. There was no need. At least, there hadn't been before. But now, the sight of it sitting there felt like an invitation, a test of sorts. I hesitated for a moment, then picked it up. My hands felt strangely steady as I unlocked it and went straight to her messages. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. The chat with Maria. I scrolled, my eyes moving quickly over the texts, my anger growing with each passing word. Maria wrote, "Don't worry, he'll come around. Men always do." Lana responded, "I don't know, Maria. I don't want to lose him. I feel like I've already made a mess of my marriage just by bringing it up." Maria wrote back, "He loves you. He'll get over it. Even if you sleep around and tell him, he can't do a thing about it. It's your body, babe. You deserve all the fun." My grip on the phone tightened as I read the last message Lana had sent. "I'll think about it." I stared at the screen, my chest tightening, my anger boiling over into something colder, sharper. "I'll think about it." So, Lana was still thinking about it. My hands were trembling, not with hesitation but with cold, calculated anger as I forwarded the screenshots from Lana's phone to mine. I double-checked to make sure the messages had been deleted from her sent folder, then carefully set the phone back on the couch, exactly as I'd found it. I couldn't stay in the house. Not then, not with her in the shower, clueless about what I'd just uncovered. I grabbed my jacket, my car keys, and left without saying a word. The drive to my lawyer's office was a blur, my thoughts racing the entire way. When I arrived, I didn't waste time. As soon as I sat down, I laid it all out for him. The conversation with Lana, the silent tension over the past few days, and the disgusting texts I'd read from Maria. My lawyer, James, listened carefully, his expression neutral but his brow furrowing slightly as I spoke. When I finished, I handed him my phone with the screenshots. He glanced at them, then stopped, holding the phone in midair. "Wait," he said, looking up at me. "You said her name was Maria?" I nodded. "Yeah, Maria. Why?" He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "I was in court for her last divorce. I didn't represent her, but I remember the case. She's been divorced 3 times, Kevin. In every single one of those marriages, she was caught cheating with multiple men. Every time, she claimed her husband was abusive, and every time, the court sided with her." I frowned, my grip tightening on the edge of my chair. Why would the court believe her? James gave me a grim look. "Because she's a damn good actor. She knows how to work the system, and unfortunately, she's gotten away with it. You need to be very careful about her influence on your wife." I exhaled sharply, trying to process this new information. "What do I do, James?" He studied me for a moment, then asked, "What do you want? Divorce? Separation?" I shook my head. "No," I said firmly. "I still want to be with my wife. I still love her, and I'm willing to work through this, as long as she doesn't cheat on me. That's the line I can't cross." James nodded slowly. "Then here's my advice. Keep an eye on her. Watch for any changes in her behavior, any signs that she's moving further down this path. And most importantly, try to talk to her. See if there's still a chance to steer this ship back on course." I left James's office determined to have a final conversation with Lana. I needed to know where we stood, whether there was still something to salvage. But fate had other plans, and I never got that chance. When I got home, Lana wasn't there. Her car was gone, the house empty and quiet. I tried calling her, but she didn't pick up. The calls went straight to voicemail, over and over again. Frustrated, I decided to wait. That evening, as I sat in the living room, staring at my phone and wondering where she was, it rang. The number on the screen was unfamiliar, but something in my gut told me to answer. "Mr. Kevin?" a man's voice asked, serious and professional. "Yes," I said, already feeling the tension rising. "This is Officer Daniels with the local police department. We need you to come to the hospital. There's been an incident involving your wife." The world seemed to stop spinning for a moment. "An incident?" I repeated, my voice trembling. "What happened? Is she okay?" "Please just come to the hospital, sir," he said, his tone giving nothing away. I didn't waste a second. I grabbed my keys and rushed to the hospital, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. When I arrived, the fluorescent lights of the emergency room burned harshly against the night, and there, standing just outside the entrance, was Maria. She saw me and started walking toward me, her face pale and drawn. "Kevin, wait," she said, reaching out to me. I shook my head and brushed past her. "Not now, Maria," I snapped. I didn't have the patience or the energy to deal with her. Inside, the smell of antiseptic hit me like a wall, and the nurse directed me to Lana's room. When I walked in, she was lying on the bed, her face streaked with tears. She looked at me, and for a moment, it seemed like she wanted to say something. But I didn't have time to process it because the doctor approached me, pulling me outside. "Mr. Kevin," he said, his voice calm but clinical. "Your wife sustained some injuries to her vagina. They will heal in a few days, but I'd recommend laying off sexual activity until she's fully recovered." I stared at him, his words not making sense. What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice hoarse. Before he could respond, the cop who had called me appeared. He gestured for me to step aside, away from the doctor and Lana's room. "Mr. Kevin," he began carefully, "your wife was found at a party during a drug raid. She was in a very compromised position with 3 men. The air seemed to leave my lungs, and I felt like I might collapse." "What do you mean? Compromised how?" He hesitated, then said, "She was engaged in sexual activity with them. When we found her, she was crying and claimed that the men forced her." A small sliver of hope rose in me, that maybe she had been a victim in all this. But the officer's next words shattered that. "We reviewed the CCTV footage from the property," he said, his tone grim. "She wasn't forced. She was there on her own will. We are still investigating the assault angle, but it seems a bit difficult to prove." I walked into Lana's hospital room, my heart pounding with a mix of anger and confusion. There she was, lying on the bed, her face blotchy and tear-streaked. She kept repeating the same words over and over again, like she was trying to convince herself. I didn't want to, but they forced me. I couldn't take it anymore. I walked over to her and gently placed my hand on hers, trying to offer some comfort. "Just rest, Lana," I said quietly. "We'll figure this out." But I couldn't stay in that room. The words, the situation, it was all too much. I walked out of the room, my mind racing. As soon as I stepped into the hallway, I saw Maria. She caught my eyes and froze, her face going pale when she saw how furious I was. Without a word, she turned and ran for the exit. I didn't chase her. There was no point. I knew I'd deal with her later. I stayed with Lana at the hospital, sitting by her side and doing my best to care for her, even though the thought of her betrayal gnawed at me. I called my boss to let him know what had happened, and he gave me a few days off to take care of everything. The next day, I took Lana home. I didn't say much during the ride, and neither did she. We both knew the silence was thick with the weight of everything that had happened. At home, I took care of her, made sure she had everything she needed. I cooked for her, helped her with the things she couldn't do on her own. But I never stayed in the same room with her. She had her own space, and I had mine. It felt like the only way to keep the distance I needed. A week later, I came home to find Lana sitting on the edge of the bed, her expression hopeful, like she was trying to piece things back together. "Kevin," she said softly, her voice trembling. "I love you. I want us to move past this. I want you to come back to the bedroom. I want to make love to you." I stood there, my body rigid, the words cutting through me. I didn't say a word. I just turned and walked out of the room, not trusting myself to speak. For the next 2 days, Lana wouldn't stop begging me. She kept trying to talk, apologize, promise things would be different. But I couldn't bring myself to respond, not when everything inside me felt so torn apart. I couldn't pretend things were fine. On the 3rd day, I finally told her to come to the kitchen table. She walked in, her face a mix of hope and desperation, like she was waiting for some kind of sign from me. I sat down across from her, folding my arms, trying to keep my emotions in check. "Do you still want to experiment, Lana?" I asked, my voice steady but cold. She looked at me, unsure, and I saw the anxiety in her eyes. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't answer directly. I just said, "Call Maria. We need to talk." She looked confused, but she didn't argue. She took out her phone and called Maria. I could hear a muffled conversation on the other side of the room, Maria's voice light with curiosity. "Has Kevin forgiven you?" she asked. Lana's response was barely audible, but I heard her say, "Maybe, yes." A few minutes later, Maria walked through the door. She sat down in one of the chairs without saying a word, her eyes glancing between Lana and me. I didn't waste any time. I looked at Lana, making sure she knew this was serious. "How did you get to that party, Lana?" Her head immediately dropped, her eyes cast down to the table. I went with Maria," she muttered, her voice small, like she was trying to shrink under the weight of my questions. "And did you know there were men waiting for you when you got there?" I asked, not giving her any leeway. She nodded, her face flushed with shame. "Yes," she whispered. "So, you knew exactly what would happen. You knew you would have men to entertain you," I said, my voice turning harsh. "You were not forced." She looked up at me then, tears brimming in her eyes. I reached there, but I changed my mind at the last moment. I told them to stop, but they didn't. And then, just like that, she started crying again. So, let me retrace what happened. You discussed the party with Maria, then you decided that you will go to the party, then you got dressed for the party, then you got in a car and reached the destination, then you met the men, then you got undressed, and then you decided not to have sex and wanted them to stop. Maria quickly spoke up. Yes, that is exactly what happened. I didn't even look at her. Instead, I fixed my gaze on Lana. The tension between us was thick, and I could feel the weight of the moment bearing down on me. Answer me, woman, I shouted, my voice booming with enough force to visibly shake her. She flinched, her eyes widening as if she hadn't expected the outburst. For a moment, there was silence. Then, slowly, she looked up at me. Her voice trembled as she said, "Yes." I leaned back in my chair, trying to process everything, but there was no time for reflection. My hand reached into my pocket, pulling out my phone. I didn't hesitate, dialing the number I had in mind. I waited a moment for the line to connect before I spoke, my tone unwavering. "Please go ahead," I said, the words cold but deliberate. A man dressed in a sharp suit walked into the room, his presence cutting through the tension like a knife. Without a word, he handed Lana a manila envelope. "You've been served," he said coolly. I watched as Lana took the envelope, her expression unreadable. Then the man turned to Maria, handing her an envelope as well. "You've been served." That's when I couldn't hold it in any longer. I took a breath, my voice steady but firm. "I've filed for divorce," I said, my eyes locking onto Lana. Then I shifted my gaze to Maria, my anger rising. "I've sued you for breaking my marriage." Maria's face twisted in disgust. Without warning, she flung the envelope at my face. "I've seen enough of these," she spat, her voice dripping with contempt. "I don't give a damn about your marriage." I stood there, the sting of her words hitting harder than the envelope itself. But it wasn't just that. She had thrown it at me. I couldn't let that slide. "You threw that envelope at me," I said, my voice rising, sharp with anger. "That's assaulting me in my own home." She didn't hesitate. Without a word, she raised her hand and slapped me across the face. I got up, the anger burning through me, but deep down, I knew she had crossed the line. Maria ran out of the house and I could see it in her eyes. She knew she had gone too far. I wasn't going to let this go. I followed her, running after her into the cold night. She quickly got in her car, slamming the door shut, and took off. Without thinking, I jumped into my truck and sped after her, determined to catch up. She should have headed home, but no, she took off onto the freeway. The rain started coming down harder, the sky darkening as the headlights of our vehicles cut through the storm. I could barely keep up as she weaved through the wet roads. She was not trained to drive fast. I saw her skid. The back of the car whipped out from under her, and in an instant, it went off the road. My heart stopped as I watched the car tumble, spinning out of control before it finally came to a halt. I jumped out of my truck and ran toward her, my heart pounding in my chest. I saw her there, crumpled and broken, blood staining the ground beneath her. Both her knees were bent unnaturally, out of place, and blood was pooling around her. She was in bad shape, and I felt the sting of reality sink in as I reached her side. Her phone was lying on the ground nearby, and I picked it up, my hands trembling. She was breathing hard, her chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. I took out my own phone, ready to dial 911, but as I looked at her, something stopped me. I stared at her for a long moment, unable to make the call. My mind was racing, but nothing felt real. I couldn't bring myself to do it, not yet. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, watching her struggle for air, her breathing becoming more labored, slower. 30 minutes passed in silence, the rain falling harder, the world around me spinning in slow motion. I walked over to her, kneeling beside her. My hand reached out to check her pulse, but there was nothing, just silence. I pulled my phone back out of my pocket, my fingers shaking as I finally dialed the numbers. 911, what's your emergency? The voice on the other end asked. I swallowed, my throat tight. I need help. There's been an accident. I stood there, waiting for the team to arrive. It felt like time had stopped, the rain still pouring around us, the air thick with a heaviness I couldn't shake. When they finally came, I heard the words I had been waiting for. The victim is dead. I left shortly after, my mind numb as I drove home. I didn't know what to expect, what I was going to walk into. But when I walked through the door, there she was, Lana, still crying, still reeling from everything. I stood there for a moment, just watching her. The weight of the world was pressing down on me, and I didn't know how to say what needed to be said. Finally, I spoke, my voice steady but cold. I lost her, I said. I'll get her next time. I know I lied, but then my happy life was just killed by that witch. The tears in Lana's eyes intensified, but I couldn't feel any sympathy. My mind was already miles away. I took a deep breath before continuing. You should start packing your things. I want you gone by morning. Her sobs increased, but I couldn't allow myself to be moved by them. She pleaded, but I stopped her with a look. Lana, I said, my voice softer now but still firm, you did everything I warned you about. You thought about sleeping with other men. You arranged for it. You did more than what I consider cheating. You crossed lines that I can't unsee. I paused, watching her as she struggled to process my words. I filed for divorce based on irreconcilable differences. I went on, each word deliberates. Not because of your cheating, but because I cannot live with you, constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering if you'll let another friend poison you and destroy my marriage. The next morning, Lana was gone. She packed her things quietly, avoiding eye contact with me. She left without a word, but I could see the anger, the confusion, the bitterness in her eyes. I didn't try to stop her. I didn't try to hold on to anything. I had made my decision, and it was final. Lana fought the divorce petition with everything she had. She hired lawyers, tried to spin the story, but I wasn't backing down. She even suggested therapy, trying to salvage something, anything, but I wasn't interested. I shrugged off her attempts at reconciliation. I'd had enough of her lies, her manipulations. The trust was gone, and it couldn't be repaired. A year passed before the divorce was final. The whole process drained me. I lost a lot of money, not just in court fees, but in the final settlement. But the one thing I didn't lose was the house. It was the one thing I could hold on to, the one piece of stability I had left. I found out that Ben and Brenda had gotten divorced too. It wasn't something I expected, but when I met Ben one day, we ended up talking about everything. It felt like two men who had both been through the same storm, in different ways, but still scarred by the same kind of betrayal. He looked rough, worn out from the battle, the kind of exhaustion only a divorce could bring. We sat down over a drink, and he started to open up about what had happened. You know, Ben said, staring into his glass, Maria poisoned Brenda's mind. She kept talking about this idea of an open marriage, about being free and not being confined. I didn't know what to think, but Brenda started buying into it. Maria got into her head, telling her it was the only way to be happy, to not feel trapped. I could feel the anger building up in his voice as he spoke, but there was a hint of sorrow too, like he was mourning what could have been. Everything changed after that, Ben continued, shaking his head. Brenda started pulling away, becoming someone I didn't even recognize. She wasn't the woman I married anymore. I didn't know what to say. I could relate to his pain, to the feeling of being deceived. But in the end, Ben looked me in the eye and said, "So I got divorced." I listened to Ben, feeling the weight of his words as he spoke about Brenda. It was painful to hear how Maria had gotten in her head, how she had turned everything upside down. I had my own experience with Maria, and hearing his story only confirmed what I already knew. I looked at Ben, shaking my head. "Maria's a snake," I said, the bitterness in my voice undeniable. She never wanted any of her friends to have a good married life. I honestly think she was jealous of what we had. She couldn't stand seeing other people happy in their relationships. She wanted them all to be like her. Messed up and broken. Ben sighed, taking a slow drink. "I guess we were both fools, huh?" "We were," I agreed, clinking my glass against his. "But now we know better. I don't even know why I didn't see it sooner." Maria had a way of getting into people's heads, manipulating them. It was like she wanted to destroy everything good around her. I paused for a moment, thinking about my own pain. "I filed for divorce, you know," I said quietly, looking at Ben. "It wasn't just the cheating. It was the constant fear, the wondering if she was going to find another friend to poison her mind, to pull her further away from me. I couldn't live like that anymore." Ben nodded, a silent understanding passing between us. We both knew the cost of what we'd been through. From that point on, Ben and I started meeting occasionally. We didn't talk about the past every time, but it was always there, lingering beneath the surface. Sometimes it felt good just to have someone who understood, someone who had been through something similar. Lana spent some time in therapy after everything, trying to pick up the pieces of her life. A few months later, she remarried. It was almost like everything was moving forward for her, like the past didn't matter. She got what she wanted in the end, and I was left with a sense of emptiness. As for me, I'm still here. Still single. I occasionally date, but I keep my distance from love. I can't let myself get close to anyone like that again. It hurts too much. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.